So a lot of what I do is look at riders and assess what specifically goes on for them. So why can't you do what it is that you want to do? So I kind of call what I do high performance rider assessment, and it kind of stems from having worked with our elite squads and looked at, what do they need to do, and then how can we take that back? So it's actually relevant to everyone. I'd love to have riders, all riders, that are having a bit of an idea of this is what I actually need to do what I do within my sport. So we look at the things in the rider that gets in the horse's way or confuses him. We look at what might be injury or pain risks for that rider. I learned early on working with horse riders that they actually don't care about pain or injury to themselves as long as they can ride. So I kind of, I still talk about things because we don't just live on our horse. We have to do real life as well. But it's not the selling point that usually makes the difference. The thing that makes the difference is how can we change the rider and through that change the horse. I look for the things specifically that stop the rider being able to do what should be normal. Yeah, so that's the biomechanics is a big word, don't be scared by it. And then the things that inhibit or stop the rider being able to do performance level training. I'll explain that in a little bit more detail. Essentially, I talk to the rider, and they can usually tell me what's not working. They say, I want to do this one thing, but I can't, or I can't make my half pass one way, I just can't get to bend, but I can get it the other way. So it's a problem solving. What is it individually for that rider and for that horse that doesn't work? So when they can tell me what looks wrong, what feels wrong, my job then is a bit of clinical reasoning to work out, well, why? Because when you can work out why, then you can work out how we can change that rider to be able to do what they need to do. We can summarise it. This is my little diagram. So basically summarise it into this performance wheel. Half of the wheel will get you from bad to good. The other half will get you from good to great. The first thing we look at for a rider is what is their posture? Or as I say to people, how do you live in your body? And now this is not just in riding. I mean, you could look at me when I look at not just a rider, but just a general patient. We look at, well, what does their brain think is straight? Because I have people that say, yeah, I'm totally straight. Yeah, this is straight, isn't it? Or even their head, yeah, sure, that's no problem. They'll compensate somewhere else because our brain really only cares, are our eyes straight? And they'll kind of arrange our body in underneath that. So if you live wonky off the horse because of your seating position at work, because of old injuries, because of different things that mean that you actually don't have a good map in your brain of where straight is, that's going to be something we're going to need to look at, well, why is that, and retrain that. And someone that has a funny posture will often have some pain off the horse anyway. And that's the thing we look at there. The two red segments are the things that are going to stop you being able to do what you want to do. So we're looking at range of motion, so we're looking at joints that don't move, muscles that are short, muscles that are tight, which might be the effect of old injuries that haven't been rehabilitated. Riders tend to fall off, and there's lots of injuries that go with that, and that we don't necessarily, once pain has stopped, we don't necessarily go, well, am I able to do everything that I want to be able to do with that? The other part of restriction, or our red section, is our control strategies. How do we actually control the orientation of the various parts of our body? And that goes into our core stability question, into breathing, into different ways that, again, because when we get on a horse, we're essentially at a low level, a dangerous situation. So our brain is going to cause us to tense and to not be able to always react appropriately to that situation. They're the two things, the two areas that will stop us. This is a bit more of a physio perspective, but the little orange segment is about mobility of our nerves, because if we don't have nerves that can slide and glide as we move, if we have back pain, if we have neck pain, if we have thoracic pain, Often there's a component of nerve, so I'll always check that with a rider to just make sure that's not a source of pain. So if we can tick all those three segments, we can then move on to the things that are going to make you not just good, but great. So this is actually looking at performance level training, and this is a lot of what John Pitts does talk about, is things like anaerobic fitness, so huff and puff fitness, because we don't do an endurance sport. We're not out there running for hours, but we do have specific high-level demands that we need to be able to meet. Balance and reaction time, very, very important for riding, not just for performance, but for saving ourselves as things go wrong. So knowing quicker where we're going wrong is really important. And also looking at that muscular endurance. So can we do a repetitive movement pattern powerfully as long as we need to? So that's the way that I essentially summarise rider performance. I also use some video analysis when I look at a rider. We can tell a lot from sort of the clinical tests that we can look at any rider and say, well, do you meet those off-horse benchmark markers? But the other thing is, well, what happens in real time? So we look at, this is just one rider that I've worked with recently. Now she's got a lot of off-horse pain, so she has some quite specific problems, but we look at her on both reins in the same position, in the same phase of the horse's gait, and look at, well, for her rib cage shifts quite significantly, yeah? And, she's been told lots and lots, don't collapse that side of your hip, don't collapse. But what she actually needed to think about was actually controlling the other side, and she needed to get off the horse and practice that. We also then look at side, from a side position. I've chosen to use these photos because it does show I don't just work with high-level riders, right? I work with everyone. But we look at how well that the rider can maintain shoulder, hip, heel alignment. Not just looking at still shots as well, but looking at when we slow down that video capture, what actually happens. I mean, can that rider go with the movement as it happens? And it can be quite revealing for those riders to go, oh, that's what actually happens when I feel this one thing. The video also helps us to look at a rider over time. So we can look, and this is where, if you're going to measure performance and look at, well, am I getting better? Because, there's a great book called Talent is Overrated. And in Talent is Overrated, it talks about the fact that good riders or good performers rarely get better because they just do what they've always done. But to actually to actually improve, we have to do focused practice of the things that we're kind of weak at and see how they change over time. Video is a really good way of seeing that if you're doing some stuff off the horse, the best marker of a change in performance is actually changing the rider and seeing the horse go better. So the things that we get marked in a dressage test, things like our submission, like impulsion, like straightness, that have cumulative marks through the whole test. If we can change those by changing the rider, that makes a whole lot more difference to overall scores and performance than just a few rider marks at the end.